Hi, Mauricio. Since the 26th of December, only 3 teams have picked up more points than Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, and to be positive.
Hello there guys, Daniel Childs back here again for my preview, my team selector ahead of the penultimate game of this season for Chelsea against Brighton at the Amex Stadium tomorrow evening. I'll be doing my watch along for that on Tifo once again, so please do hit the link in the description box below and use my referral code CFC to sign up for Tifo and join me for that watch along. It got quite hectic and dramatic as expected on Saturday. Hopefully it isn't as dramatic and stressful, but hopefully the same outcome of a Chelsea win. And yeah, I mean, it's just great. I think I reflected this in my preview for Forest, and I think it's kind of been a consistent theme in recent weeks. Just it's nice to kind of go into games with optimism because it is a nice feeling, and to see that optimism has continued and to see the way the team fought back from a very difficult place with under 15 minutes to go on Saturday was really, really encouraging. Pochettino seems to be in a good mood. Hopefully the next couple of days will solidify the decision that I think is quite obvious in the sense that I think we need to keep Mauricio Pochettino. The chance for European football is there for Chelsea. It's in their hands. It's whether they can get over the finish line. And I think the great thing is we have some big players back for these remaining 2 games, and hopefully they can have another positive impact. So we'll start off with Pochettino's press conference. From an injury point of view, it seems like Chukwuemeka and Chilwell are back in training, but he didn't seem so emphatic over whether both would be involved. The very least, I think they'll be involved on Sunday, hopefully. It's kind of a bit ironic. You just cannot have it lost. The bit of irony that Chelsea's injury list has suddenly got the smallest it has all season right before the end, right before we can actually fully capitalise on it. But maybe that's a good thing to get the players fresh over the summer. But I think other than that, it's in terms of the strategy for this game, in terms of like big players returning, that there isn't any kind of big breaking news. And from a negative point of view of players being ruled out, that's positive as well, that there isn't anyone being added to that injury list. And Pochettino seemed in a really good mood. I thought the clip of him sort of laughing and clapping and enjoying the fact that he was told that Chelsea, I think, have picked up the fourth most points since Boxing Day, I believe it is, in the Premier League. I mean, that's a really impressive stat. It's a really impressive number, and it reflects why Pochettino should be given more time with this squad. I think it also challenges our perception of the way this season has gone. I spoke about this after Forest, that it's utterly bizarre how when you look at those numbers, when you look at the chance, the real possibility that by Sunday evening Chelsea are finishing 6th, over 60 points or around 60 points. And if you would have given us that at the start of the year, I think most people would have accepted it, or at least seen it as some form of progression, or at least a step back in the right direction. But of course, the journey getting to that place has been very, very chaotic and very up and down, and hasn't always felt like a realistic aim or goal that Chelsea could achieve, or this group could achieve. But it's nice that they could achieve it, and then that will give Pochettino sort of the ammunition to say to the board next week in kind of this end of season review that, listen, I deserve more time, and look, I've got players back, and suddenly the team is playing better again, and I feel I can do a good job in a second season. So we'll see how that all plays out. Obviously, I do think the mood could be impacted if Chelsea don't get European football, but you don't really want to be making decisions on a head coach over one game. I think that's farcical. We have seen an increase in performance over a longer period of time. If you're not just actually looking at the last kind of 3 or 4 games, if you actually take out the Arsenal game, which is hard to do because, it was a very dramatic and kind of harrowing night, I think, for a lot of us, and it still is. It still was a disgraceful performance. But if you actually look wider than that, and that's where those numbers really come into play, it actually does show a team that has improved as the season gone on. If you remember right at the start of the year, we were talking about how the team, from kind of a metrics point of view, expected goals, chances created, they weren't that far away, and it's taken us a long time to get to this point where actually it looks like Chelsea are starting to finish those chances, which is a good sign going into next season. Brighton, I feel like Brighton, obviously narratively, there's a lot about Brighton-Chelsea games nowadays because of the exchange in personnel on the pitch, off the pitch, in the boardroom, with potential coaching changes, with Roberto De Zerbi still being linked with the club. This hasn't been a good season for Brighton, and I don't think this has been a good time for Roberto De Zerbi. I don't think this year has helped his reputation. Brighton have been horrendous defensively. They really have. They've kept very few clean sheets in the league. I was tracking the stat a few weeks ago, but it kind of speaks for itself. I think they've conceded 3 or more goals 8 times in the Premier League this year. The goals they concede at times are quite farcical. I think a lot of people would have saw the one against Man City where they were trying to pass out from the back and could have cleared the ball. There was space to clear the ball, but they kept on trying to pass around their box and eventually got punished for it. And there is a sort of a way of thinking and a way of looking at the game currently that De Zerbi is kind of everything wrong with it in terms of his very strict ideals of this kind of circuit football of playing 1,000 passes, not creating a team that looks like they're one of the best in the world, but, is very adherent to this style of play and actually is being found out from a physical point of view. They're conceding goals from set pieces, they're conceding goals from crosses, and actually is it all theory and actually not a lot of end product, which has always been kind of one of the criticisms of Brighton, right? They can't finish their chances, and actually it's a lot of nice aesthetic kind of dressing up, but actually the fundamental things when they come up against the reality of football, the harsh reality of football, like they've been battered by Luton 4-0 this year. They've been battered by a lot of teams, and I think that De Zerbi I don't think should be anywhere near the Chelsea job, because I just think defensively we have concerns about defence this year, and rightly so. Why would you bring in a coach who historically has had a lot of problems with his defence? And I just don't really enjoy his style of play, to be honest. But it still is a threat for Chelsea, absolutely. You're going away to the Amex. Brighton do still possess in Cisco. They still do possess. As much as people may chuckle at this, I think Danny Welbeck has still proven to be. It says a lot about Danny Welbeck that he still remains, an effective player at times in the Premier League. And they have suffered injuries this year. I think Ansu Fati hasn't quite been the lone player that they hoped and dreamed he would be over the summer. Of course, Ferguson has suffered injury. They haven't quite, and still I think it says a lot that Pascal Gross remains still one of their most reliable players. I think it shows you that they've struggled to replace his output. So this game is an interesting one because they still have one more home game after this, and effectively the season's done for them. But there always is that thing with Chelsea, right? Will they up their game because it is Chelsea? Moises Caicedo returning to the Amex. Marc Cucurella may be playing. Sanchez won't be playing, but those two at least could be playing. So it's a tough game, but I think it's one that Chelsea should absolutely be going in there and feeling that there is room to exploit Brighton. And I think defensively too, there's a lot of space there for Chelsea, especially with the way some of our players have been performing in the attacking third in recent weeks. In terms of the team, I am a little bit more conflicted on this, mainly because of what happened in that last 15 minutes. Is that fair? Is that unfair? But, given you do have REECE James back, especially with Raheem Sterling back, what will be the changes? And will he go with this inverted Cucurella formation again? Will he feel that after the weekend, is it the suitable game, or does he maybe feel that actually, because of the way Brighton play a very technical game, actually it could work for us again? I think that's a big question to answer, because he did move more to a conventional kind of 4-2-3-1, 4-2-2-2 at the end of the Forest game, and it worked for us winning and scoring 2 goals. I don't think REECE James should start. I really don't. I still think we've got to be cautious. I know how incredible he looked. Pochettino has said that he wants to give REECE a little bit more time, so I assume that would be kind of 30 minutes potentially up in the second half. I think I'd rather have REECE come off the bench, and then maybe, just maybe, he is good enough to play 60 minutes on Sunday. Maybe we're in that position, but I think being patient with REECE, I think, is just the smartest play here. And what a player, what an outstanding talent you have off the bench if you need him later in the game, as we saw on Saturday. Petrovic in goal. Malo Gusto, I'm going to start. I think that Gusto should be coming back into this team just to deal with those potential wide threats for Brighton, which I do think are still there, even with their struggles in front of goal in recent times. I think you absolutely need to be trying to nullify that and try and get forward yourself. And I just think Gusto has obviously been a very competent player. This does mean that you are probably very likely moving away from a back 3 system. But if I'm going to start a back 2, I am going to start Trevor Chalobah and Thiago Silva. Benoit Badiashile, he has been better in recent weeks, and I know from an offensive point of view, from his passing, that may seem a bit harsh, but I just think Chalobah and Silva have just been better than him. I really do, and I just think as a partnership, they give me a lot more confidence, I think, in terms of dealing with a game like this. Marc Cucurella is obviously going to start at left back. If you're going to start a conventional left back, who else are you starting? Unless you really want to start REECE James, and then I'd maybe move Malo Gusto out to the left, but I'll start Cucurella. Caicedo and Gallagher in central midfield. Caicedo has been monstrous in recent games. I mean, he has been Chelsea's best player, and what a time to come into form against your former club and potentially put in another big display in terms of winning the ball, covering ground, spotting danger, but also offensively. You look at some of the passes he's played. He played the pass in for Jackson. I think it was the 5th goal against West Ham. He set up that goal. Some of the passes he played on Saturday that didn't lead to goals. He played a really nice pass to Cole Palmer in the second half when Chelsea was struggling to create things. He played the switch sort of pass to, I think it was REECE James, that led to Nicholas Jackson's winner. So this is a guy who offensively is showing his quality too. Three-behind striker, I'm going to make some alterations. Madueke, I just don't think has done enough to keep himself in the team. I know he's played well in recent weeks, but I just, again, I wouldn't be too disappointed if Cole Palmer starting this game. I would start Christopher Nkunku. I mean, he's further along than, say, REECE James. He's increasingly been playing more minutes. I think he could maybe manage 50 to 60 minutes tomorrow night. And I just think the quality of player, those 1-2s, we want to see Nkunku play. You've bought him as a big player. I would start him just behind the striker or just in some form of attacking trio or, for wherever you want to put Nkunku. I think he should be starting this game. I think it's a toss of a coin between Sterling and Mudryk. I think both have a reason to feel they could start this game. Mudryk obviously scored the first goal. I think had some brilliant moves in that game. Unfortunately, wasn't always found, but I think it was a much more positive performance for Mykhailo Mudryk on Saturday, obviously. But then Raheem Sterling comes off the bench and changes the game. I mean, his right-footed effort goes in the bottom corner. And I do ponder whether Pochettino will look at it and go, Mudryk off the bench. I think, both players you could argue off the bench can be a threat, but I think maybe Sterling starts this game, and given he had such a big impact off the bench and maybe wants to end the season strongly, and then you do have that option of Mudryk to come off. Nicholas Jackson is scoring for fun at the moment. I mean, I know people don't, when we talk about Jackson like that, the perception of him is very different, but if you look at his recent form, scored against Nottingham Forest, he scored against West Ham, he scored against Spurs. He has been someone that is just netting goals consistently. He impacts the team. He creates goals, I think, at times for the team as well with his movement. So Jackson has to be playing, and hopefully he can hit another one. Even if it is just one, we know how important they can be for Chelsea. So that is my team. Please let me know yours in the comments below. Join me for the watch along on Tifo. Link in the description box below. We have a lot of fun. We have a chilled conversation during the game. Obviously, we react to what's going on. You can ask me questions. You can get involved. So please do join the Tifo community. It will be my last watch along of this season because I'm going to be at the Bournemouth game on Sunday. But as I said recently, I'll be doing more watch alongs over the summer. I'll defo be doing one for the Champions League final, most likely. Maybe the FA Cup final, because it does relate to Chelsea as well, with Man United potentially getting some form of Europe if they win that game. So we'll be covering stuff on Tifo. So thank you guys so much for watching, for listening, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.